Welcome back. We are moving on to chapter 34 in Ecce Romani, which is going to cover positive, comparative, and superlative adjectives. This first video is going to cover the building the meaning on page 64 as well as the forms on page 65 in your book. I would recommend having your book out as we go through this video. It's going to help you just in terms of visualizing what we're doing. Here's a sentence, very basic, easy sentence. Gaius is happy. Let's put that into Latin. We get Gaius est laetus, and if we look grammatically at this sentence, laetus, we would say, which is in bold, we would say is an adjective, and it's modifying or complementing Gaius. So there we go. We know that adjective loves noun from way back when in Latin 1. So both of those are masculine, both of those are nominative, both of those are singular because they're agreeing with each other. They have to agree in gender number case. That's what adjectives and nouns do. That's how they work. So laetus, again, an adjective. And let's be a little more specific than we've been in the past. We're going to call that a positive adjective. There are 3 different degrees of adjectives, and this is the first one, the most basic one. So laetus, we would say, is a positive adjective. Let's move on. Here's a sentence. Messala is happier than Gaius. As you're looking at this sentence, and as we're going to think about how we're going to put it into Latin, we want to again find an adjective because we're dealing with adjectives. Well, that adjective is happier, isn't it? Putting this into Latin, we would say Messala est laetior quam Gaius. We just said happier is our adjective. That's why it's in bold. Adjectives agree with nouns. What is happier, laetior, agreeing with? Well, it's agreeing with Messala. Messala is the one who is happier. Adjective loves noun, so they're the same gender number case. They're both masculine, they're both nominative, and they're both singular. But here we have something different than in that first sentence, don't we? Because instead of just one person being happier, now we're saying that one person is happier than another person. Messala is happier than Gaius. So we're comparing those two people. So this adjective laetior is going to be a different degree. It's not a positive adjective anymore. We call this a comparative adjective, and hopefully you can see the reason why. We are comparing two things, in this case people, Messala and Gaius, and that adjective is almost like the pivot around which those two things swivel. So Messala is happier than Gaius. Laetior, we call that a comparative adjective. We have one more degree. Let's see what this looks like. You probably guessed it, happy goes to happier, so then we get happiest. Titus is the happiest of all. Happiest, still an adjective. Putting this into Latin, we get Titus est laetissimus omnium. Laetissimus, that adjective, is still agreeing with Titus. They are both still masculine, they are both still nominative and singular. Adjective loves noun, but now we have this third degree. He's not happy. He's not happier than somebody else. He is happiest compared to everybody else. Omnium, everybody. We call this a superlative adjective. And super, the prefix super in Latin means over or above or beyond. So if you think about it, this is well beyond just a positive or a comparative adjective. This is the most, right? The most happy or the happiest, laetissimus. So let's look at all 3 of these together. Laetus, which was happy, we're going to call that a positive degree of an adjective. That's the base. That's where we're going to start with any Latin adjective. The next degree is the comparative degree, happier or more happy. And we can see we took the US ending off of laetus and we replaced it with IOR, laetior, happier. Finally, we get the superlative degree, L-A-E-T remains, but now we have issimus. Laetissimus means the happiest or most happy. So with these underlined endings and the stem which doesn't change, hopefully you can start to see a little pattern of how these 3 degrees of adjectives work. And what's nice is that if we want to form a comparative or a superlative for any adjective in Latin, we're going to follow the same steps all the time, which makes things nice and simple and easy. So let's take a look at some examples. Positive, comparative, superlative across the top. We're going to start with molestus, which means annoying. This is a 2-1-2 adjective, molestus a We have a stem, M-O-L-E-S-T, and then we add those different endings to the end of that stem based on what we're trying to agree with, whatever noun we might be working with. So that means annoying. Moving on to the comparative, we can see the stem remains the same, M-O-L-E-S-T, but now we have I-O-R or I-U-S on the end of it. The next video, the second video for this chapter, will examine in more detail where those endings are coming from. For now, let's just say that this molestior or molestius means more annoying. That's the comparative degree. Finally, in superlative, we still have the same stem, molest, but now it's issimus on the end, and that means most annoying. So that issim and then us again, the us obviously is going to be interchangeable just like we would expect, but issimus is going to be our indicator that we have the superlative degree of an adjective. So molestus, annoying; molestior, more annoying; molestissimus, most annoying. Another one. This time a third declension adjective, brevis, brevis, breve, which means short. If we want to say shorter, we're going to keep that stem, brev, but now it's ior or ius, bravior, shorter. And then brevissimus, shortest. Another one, felix, felicis means lucky. So to take the stem is felic, because we have to take off the genitive ending. So felicior is our comparative degree, which means luckier, and then felicissimus means luckiest. Another one, prudens, prudentus means wise. So our stem is prudent if we take off that bolded genitive ending. So prudentior or prudentius means wiser, and then prudentissimus means wisest. All of this table chart right here corresponds to point number 1 from the forms section on page 65. So again, if you're following along in your book, this is from page 65, note number 1. Now let's move on to note number 2. Sometimes adjectives end in er, and adjectives that do end in er are going to behave a little bit differently in the superlative degree. So miser, misera, miserum, which means miserable. The comparative is miserior or miserius, more miserable. But instead of miserissimus for most miserable, it's miserimus. So you can see that r, the final r on the stem of miser, we double it, and then it's imus. So miserimus. Listen to the sound. Miserissimus, what it would be, versus miserimus. Which one sounds better? Definitely miserimus. And we know that Latin likes things to sound good, so that makes a lot of sense doing this. Another one, pulcher, pulcra, pulcrum, beautiful, gives us pulcrior in the comparative. That's fine, that's standard and normal. But instead of pulcherissimus, it's pulcherimus. And again, that sounds a lot better. We are reduplicating actually that r. So we get a double r, pulcherimus most beautiful. Keller, kelleris, kellera, a third declension adjective, means swift or quick. Kellerior means more swift, quicker. And then kellerimus, most swift. Finally, acer, acris, acra means sharp. Acrior means sharper. And then acerimus means sharpest. So sometimes for the superlatives, for adjectives that end in an er, we're going to double that r to make the superlative degree. Something to look out for. We also sometimes do something a little different if adjectives end in an l. Most of the time, for something like fidelis, which means faithful, fidelior is more faithful, and then fidelissimus means most faithful. That's fine. Issimus, that's what we'd expect. But the next one here, facilis, facilis, facila, which means easy. To say easier, that would be facilior. But then to say easiest, we don't want to say facilissimus. We're going to double the L to give us facilimus. So on that previous slide, we were doubling the R's for those adjectives. Now we're going to double this L. Facilimus means easiest. And again, that's much easier to say than facilissimus, isn't it? There are 6 adjectives that work this way in Latin. Facilis is one. Another is difficulus. So if facilis means easy, difficulus obviously means difficult. And the superlative would be difficilimus, not difficilissimus. Similis, which means similar. Similis, similior, and then similimus, most similar. Dissimilis, which means dissimilar, would give us dissimilimus in the superlative. Gracilis, which means slender, gives us gracilimus in the superlative. And humilis, which means humble, gives us humilimus in the superlative. So this basically recaps the forms on page 65. Go through this again if you need to. Look over page 65. And then in the next video, we'll look more into the comparative adjectives and where those forms come from and how we're going to decline them as we go through for any comparative adjectives. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.